Today on the Conscious Fertility Podcast, we're joined by Dr. Kela Smith, a holistic and integrated fertility expert with over 20 years of experience. Now, Dr. Kela Smith holds a PhD in natural and holistic medicine and is a board-certified functional nutritionist and health coach. She's the founder of the Hormone Puzzle Society, and we're going to talk about hormones today. And this is where she empowers individuals and couples to take charge of their fertility and hormone health through evidence-based holistic strategies. Kela is also a podcast host, publisher, author, and the creator of multiple summits focusing on fertility, pregnancy wellness, and professional fertility coaching. Her mission is to inspire and educate while offering practical tools for achieving optimal reproductive wellness. And personally, I'm really excited to dive into her wealth of knowledge on fertility on the Conscious Fertility Podcast. Kela, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. That was quite the introduction.
Did I do my research?
You did. Yes. I was like, who wrote that? That was awesome.
Yeah, I did my little research about you. So hopefully that was accurate, but thank you. And, we talked off camera a little while ago, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You've put out a Hormone Puzzle cookbook as well. And I think I love doing these podcasts because some of the guests give away things. And so I get to help give away things. So if those people want to listen to the end of this, you got some freebies for people too, which I think is great.
Yes.
I'm really curious, your story, like, how did you get to where you are now, where you're hosting these big fertility summits, and just what drove you to, study and learn what you're doing and have this fertility focus? If you have a personal story to share, I would love to hear it, as would our listeners, I'm sure.
Sure. I for sure have a fertility story. That's how I got into this work. And it started with my own personal struggles. My husband and I got married. We thought it would be really easy to get pregnant. And we quickly learned that it wasn't as easy as we had been taught. We thought you have sex, you get pregnant. That's how the body works, right? But
Right.
not for us. So we went to our OBGYN, like what most people do. We had some testing run. We were telling her, we were trying to get pregnant, wasn't working. So she ran some tests, came back and said, well, I don't see anything medically wrong. So just keep trying and come back and see me in 3 to 6 months. And so that's what we did, and it still wasn't working. And at this point, she said, okay, well, it looks like you have unexplained infertility, which I put in air quotes because I don't feel that's a proper diagnosis. But back then, I didn't know any better. So she said, with that, I want to send you to a local fertility clinic. And so we went there, ran some more tests, still nothing. And that's when they said, well, because you're 36, we recommend you do IVF. And I just sat there thinking, well, there's nothing medically wrong with me just because I'm 36. I'm not 56. Like, why do I have to do a medical procedure to make my body do something that it should be doing naturally? And so I left that office determined to figure out why I wasn't getting pregnant. And that's what I did. And back then there was no Instagram or any of this information we have now, podcasts. And so I literally went to my local library and was like, well, why am I not getting pregnant? What do I need to do? What do I need to eat? How do I need to be? And so I figured it out, and I ended up getting pregnant not once, but twice. I had my second baby at 40. Those children are now 9 and 11, very healthy little boys. And at that point, I said, I have to teach this because nobody was really talking about it. This was now at this point 8 years ago. And so I went back to school. I became a health coach and I kept going. Then I was a nutritionist. And then I got my PhD about 3 years ago. And I knew I had to teach this and, help other women and couples around the world learn that they have so much power and they can get pregnant and they will get pregnant, but they have to take that power back and be proactive in healing their bodies. And so that's what I teach today. I help people all over the world learn this and heal and get pregnant.
Well, then we're going to talk about how to give that power back through knowledge. Yeah. And I want to unpack a few things you said. And then the follow-up question is kind of, what did you discover in the library, or what would you, kind of recommend how they get to look for the underlying why? Like, how do they find that underlying cause? But you were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. And how we understand this, unexplained just means from the Western tests that we have today, looking at your blood work, looking at your tubes, the shape of your uterus, ovaries, looking at the partner's sperm, if you're with a relationship, they can't find a cause. And as you know, as soon as you start to get, I've never heard at age 36, that's like, wow, because you're still, there's no switch at age 35. Age is a factor, but geez, at 36, you're still capable, right? There's still lots of potential there. So that just means unexplained, as in from the Western perspective, modern science. And then there's Chinese medicine lens, where you may be able to explain why, and your functional medicine approach, right? And I'm curious if you had some of those whys there, because I'm thinking of somebody recently that came into my practice. unexplained infertility. And, there's also has colitis, also has celiac, and then there's all these other health complaints that she's experiencing. So from a Chinese medicine's perspective, that's not unexplained, right? We could see why the
Right.
body's out of balance. I'm assuming you subscribe to that as well.
Sure, I do for sure. I definitely subscribe to that. And back then, some of the things that I did was one, my Western doctor, my conventional doctor never asked me basic questions about my cycle. Are you cycling? Are you ovulating? Are you tracking that? When are you having intercourse? Are you having intercourse at the right time? So, this is one of the things that I thought to myself, well, it can't be normal not to have a period. This has to factor into
So
this.
you, so
And
you were
so,
missing cycles. You weren't always having a
uh-huh.
period.
So after the fact, years later, I went back and I was like, wait a minute, I think I had hypothalamic amenorrhea because
Mhm.
I didn't have a cycle and I was an athlete and I was
Mhm.
very thin and I wasn't eating enough for my workouts. And so looking back, but I was never diagnosed with HA. That should have been
Right.
the first thing they said to me. So that was
And
a piece of it for sure.
and that's the kind of work you do, because when somebody comes into your, when you see somebody, I know in my practice, and they're not cycling, because we find out right away if they're cycling or not, because we ask those questions, and we see that they're training hard and maybe not having the calories to keep up. Those are the first things that we would address, because sometimes the solution is simple, sometimes, right? So for you, that was a big part of it, right? Changing your diet, your workout strategies as well.
Exactly. So I was eating way too little and I was exercising way too hard. I was a personal trainer at the time, so I had really low body fat. And I had been taught, again, society and the norms, that that was healthy. It was healthy to be skinny. It was healthy to work out really hard, eat less, work out more. That's what we're taught. And so that's what I was doing. And it was not what I needed for fertility at all.
Always the pillars are right, like movement, diet, lifestyle, stress reduction. Like those are the pillars, and then there's things you add on to that. I find that a question that I'm wondering if the people you see have this, and I know in my experiences, they're really like why they want it. Like you want to know the why. You went to the library. For those listeners, a library is a building that has lots, because most people, you
Lots of
just go on your
books.
computer now, right? But so I'm curious what kind of functional labs, if you do use them, you like, and why, and do you think they're a game changer?
I do think they're a game changer. First, we start with the foundations. And I always tell my patients, if you don't have the foundations laid first, let's wait and do that first. Your diet, your lifestyle, let's get that on track. Once that's on track and you're doing that and you're still not getting pregnant, let's look deeper into why and look at some functional labs. So I love to use these labs in my practice. I find, like you said, they're a game changer. And some of the ones that I love to use, one, I like to look at hormones through dried urine versus blood, because blood work is only showing us that snapshot in time, as I'm sure you know. It's only showing what is happening right when it's tested. Whereas if we use a Dutch test, it's dried urine, we can look deeper, we can see the metabolites, we can see how things are being detoxed and excreted, especially with estrogen. I like to see, are you detoxing your estrogen the way we need you to? Or are you estrogen dominant and is it recirculating, causing all of, more inflammation and other hormones to be out of balance? I also love to look at the adrenal glands. I find 9 out of 10 people that I test are in adrenal fatigue and they don't even realize it. Their adrenals are in the tubes. And if that's happening, they're stuck in a fight or flight pattern with their nervous system and their body's not going to perform at optimal levels. So that's kind of the first place I'll do. I'll do a Dutch test to look at that. I also love the microbiome analysis. I find so many people have hidden gut issues that they don't realize they have. And sometimes the only symptom is they're experiencing infertility because their gut's not operating at optimal levels. And so I like to look at that. I like to see, okay, do we have any opportunistic bacteria here that we need to kill? Is your short chain fatty acid production off? Do we need to fix that? Do you have more inflammatory short chain fatty acid versus non-inflammatory? I like to look at how are your vitamins being synthesized? Are you pulling the vitamins from your food the way you need to fuel your body, to fuel your hormones? So that's probably the second test I love to run. And then the third thing I'll do, it depends. The third one is kind of a toss up between, depending on what the patient needs. Sometimes I will do a hair tissue mineral analysis where I'll look at the hair and see what the mineral pattern looks like. Do we have any deficiencies here? If you have mineral deficiencies, your body's not going to have the resources to make ATP. And what is ATP? It's the energy for your cells. So this can cause your eggs to be compromised, your partner's sperm to be compromised. So we really need to look and say, okay, are there mineral deficiencies here? Or on top of that, are there metal toxicities that we need to detox? Do you have mercury? Do you have aluminum or lead? What do we need to detox here? So that's probably the third test. And then I said it depends on the patient, because if the patient comes in with a lot of symptoms of toxicity, I like to do a mycotoxin test, or even a MOTOX, looking at environmental toxins and looking at if they have mold or mycotoxins in their system. This can tell me a lot of things, but if they don't have the symptoms pointing to that, sometimes we can save money and we don't have to do that test. So that's probably the fourth one I like to do. And then the last thing, if they're over 35, sometimes I'll even do a DNA analysis. I like looking at DNA genetic SNPs for fertility specifically. And the one that I use is called Grow Baby, and it'll show us, do you have any genetic disposition that's causing you not to be able to get pregnant? Do you have something called MTHFR, which means you're not methylating your B vitamins? This can affect your ability to get pregnant and stay pregnant. Do you have any issues anywhere else in the DNA that can cause things like preeclampsia once you get pregnant, gestational diabetes, a baby to have low birth weight? So really looking at that DNA. I like to reserve that one for over 35, just because I feel like there's more important tests before 35 that we can do. And most people can't afford all of these things. And so I really want to be mindful of their budget and really just looking at their health history and determining, okay, what tests are the most important. But those are probably the 5 that I use the most in practice.
All right, let's see if I can remember, and then I'll share some of the ones that we
That was a
do.
lot.
We like
Yes.
the Dutch as well, looking at the metabolites. So the Dutch test, and looking, you can include the adrenals in that one as well. You talked about the toxins, which I thought was interesting, the hair analysis and microtoxins.
Yes, the mycotoxin test, that's a urine test.
Yeah. And I know Jacqueline Downs, who's been on our podcast, talks a lot about the toxins and how it affects fertility. Do you do, because we fairly standard like to look at the full thyroid panel and vitamin D levels. Do you do that kind of because that's fairly standard for us in our practice to want to look at that? We don't do it on everybody, but it's pretty common compared to what they do in the Western clinics here, where they wait till you have pretty severe symptoms. We look for it pretty upfront right away when we see our fertility patients.
Sure, those are definitely important. And I want my patients to have a full blood panel plus a full thyroid. That usually comes in from their conventional doctor. When a patient comes to us, they already have that. So I'll take that and kind of read it and say, okay, this is looking at it functionally versus just conventionally. But yes, definitely. And vitamin D is super important. Most of my patients already have that.
Yeah, in Canada, because it's at the time of the recording, it's still social medicine. It's free medicine. So the tests are free, but vitamin D is not. So it's not tested. So we have to do that one because it doesn't usually get tested. And we usually see most people are deficient. And then here, if the thyroid test they do is just TSH usually, sometimes T4. And we look at free T3 and the antibodies. It's amazing how many people we have found with Hashimoto's, because we found the antibodies, but their thyroid hasn't gone out of whack yet, but we know that that's the risk. But it's so nice that we caught it early where maybe we can address it. It's just a thought. So quick tangent for our listeners. If you have the Hashimoto's and the thyroid antibodies, it's quite common after birth to have an aggravated thyroid function, let's say, and it's often mistaken as postpartum depression, and antidepressants is the treatment. However, it's your thyroid. So anybody that has a thyroid function, before you go on those antidepressants, do also have a full thyroid panel to see it's not the thyroid. That was my tangent. So coming back to your,
I agree completely.
coming back to your testing, have you heard of the metabolomics test?
Yeah, I think we talked about that offline. Yeah, that's not one I have been using regularly, just because I said, so many of my patients, we have to pick and we can't do them all. I wish we could do them all. And I think you said, well, just say this is what you need. It's 6 or 7 tests. This is what it is. But unfortunately, I have to be mindful of their budget. But tell us about that test, because I've heard of it and I know it's a really awesome test.
Well, short and sweet. Our naturopathic doctors like it. And it's just because they'll look at detox pathways. So we can see that. It looks at your omega-3 fatty acid status. It can look for mitochondrial dysfunction. which is important. And there's one or two other things that's not coming out of the top of my mind, but it has a thing that will let us know what's off, which so much of that plays not just for overall great health and hormonal health, but for fertility. So, because of the things, inflammation looks for inflammatory markers as well. So when you have mitochondrial dysfunction, you have detox issues, your omega-3s are off, and you have inflammation, that is not a good environment for good health or fertility. So that's why we tend to like that. Sometimes they look at the SpectraCell tests as well, which will kind of help look at your deficiencies in your minerals and vitamins. There's always overlaps in all the tests. And like you said, there's cost to all of these. So we don't usually, they see our naturopathic doctors and they'll recommend certain ones. Patients have asked, we're probably going to create this. We have patients that come to us and they're just like, look, I'm spending like $20,000 in IVF, or if I have to do an IVF, right? I'm okay spending a couple grand or $2,000 on a bunch of tests. Like, I want you, not everybody says this, but if a few have come to me like, oh, maybe this is what we should just let them know. Like, just tell me all the tests that are available and then let me choose. You tell me which ones you want, but maybe I want to look at everything. I want you to look at everything. As you know, sometimes we think they're not necessary, right? Because it may not give us enough or extra information to do what we want to do in the treatment approach. However, there are some people that just say, leave no stone unturned. So there's infinite amount of testing, but as you know, there is a set of probably 5 to 10 tests that if you had all this information, you could probably come up with a pretty fantastic plan for them.
Sure. And that's what I try to tell people too. If we can save you not having to do IVF, we're going to save you a lot of money. Cause in the States, it's 20 to 50 grand for one cycle, but we're also going to save your body so much heartache and chemicals and all the hardships that IVF does to the body. And so it's a win-win. So I say do all the tests that you can do and try to avoid that.
And you're talking about like the egg cell and the sperm cell. So how important are men in this approach when you're looking to have a healthy baby? For those that are in a relationship with a man, how important is the man, and do men get involved? When you see women, are men involved, or is the women carrying the weight?
Yes. So we see couples, it's 50%. The man is 50% of the equation, ladies. So he is not off the hook. I'm going to say that again. He's 50% of it. So yes, we treat our couples together. If they're in a couple relationship, we do some single moms by choice, but the couple, yes, we need to do these tests on him as well. We need to make sure everything I just said about the woman, the man needs too. So the hormone test, the microbiome test, the minerals, all of it applies to him as well. Yeah. And I will say one quick story. So I worked with a couple recently and they came to me and she was really wanting us to focus on her. But I said what I just said to you, we work on couples. And so I said, let's do this testing on him. He was an athlete. He had no, healthy eater, nothing really, no symptoms. And so we ran a microbiome analysis on him, and he had this opportunistic bacteria that studies show causes infertility. We killed that. We put him through a whole detox protocol, killed it, repopulated his microbiome, got his gut health working, and they ended up getting pregnant and just had a little girl. And they'd been trying for 3 years. And so men, it can be silent. So we need to look at the men too.
Well, let me give you right hot off the press that's for you and for our listeners why the man has to be involved. So February 13th, 2025, we're recording this. There was reported in the Jerusalem Post an article about this new fertility technology that they developed in the biomedical engineering department that can look at the quality of the sperm, look inside the sperm. So when they're picking sperm for an IVF, they can choose which is a good one. Currently, what we do is we look at what's the one that's moving the best and the best shape, right? Well, in this small little pilot project that they did, it almost doubled the IVF success rate, almost doubled when they chose the right sperm. So here's what the one of the leads, Nathan Shake, had said. We knew sperm selection was important, but the fact that we could nearly double the success rate of IVF was surprising. This proves that sperm selection is a much more critical factor than previously believed. So they're really excited about the technology. They're really excited about how they're going to choose the right sperm in an IVF. You said it's $20,000 to $50,000. I take that, and that's what I share in my blog on the website. This just reminded us how important men are to be involved in the process of getting healthy when you're trying to conceive naturally with IVF. I got to repeat this. It takes 2 to make a baby, sperm and egg. It takes 2 eggs, 2 cells, sperm and egg cell. And currently, until this has been published, they keep saying it's mostly the women. if the semen analysis is normal, you're okay. So the shout out here is for the women to strongly encourage with a big love push. Men change their diet, get off the cannabis, the alcohol. There's antioxidant therapy, there's acupuncture, low level laser therapy. Come get your testing done, because even though your semen analysis could look normal, like we see in this report, they're not making embryos. But when they found a good sperm, they were able to double the success rate.
Amazing. I'm going to go read that blog when I get off of here.
It's called the what is it called? This new technology can double IVF success. If you go to our blogs, if you find it under the February 13th, 2025.
Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to mention really fast is the sperm also controls the health of the pregnancy. And so if you want your wife, your partner to have a really easy pregnancy, minimal morning sickness, and have a really easy birth, then that also contributes to the health of the sperm making the embryo.
Yeah, I think
So
the research says what it impacts the placenta a lot, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I would say 90% of the people I see are women. Some of the men come. Even when it's male factor, some of the men don't come. And now the message from that report is normal semen analysis is not enough. You need to up your game. So
Yes, I love it.
now I want to talk, because you're the Fertility Summit founder here, and you're the Hormone Puzzle, figuring out the hormone puzzle. And hormone health is so important when it comes to reproductive health. And a lot of our listeners are perimenopause, menopause, not trying to get pregnant, and a lot of them are trying to get pregnant. So they're always looking for ways to kind of find this hormonal balance and to do it as efficiently as possible. I know you have some hacks to balance hormones. Can you share some?
Sure. So this applies to if you're trying to get pregnant, or if you're trying to avoid having terrible perimenopause or menopause symptoms, or even if you're just trying to have a healthy menstrual cycle and you're in your 20s and you're not even thinking about kids. This applies to anybody with hormones. So the first hack is something you might not think I will say, but it's so important, and that's belief. You have to believe in your body and your body's ability to heal and be healthy and to be optimal. I find so many women and couples, especially if you're on a fertility journey, they just have this belief that they're broken, that their body needs to be fixed, that it needs to be pushed, that it doesn't work right. You have to believe in yourself and your body's ability to heal. So that's the first thing. I want you to believe any stage that you're in that I just mentioned, whether you're trying to get pregnant, you're trying to avoid symptoms in perimenopause, menopause, or you want a healthy cycle, you have to believe that your body is powerful and it can do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what we alluded to earlier, is you have to have foundational health. And that's why I created the Hormone Puzzle method, was it's all the foundations of optimal health. And I'll go through it quickly because we could spend a whole hour talking about this, but it's puzzle is an acronym, and it stands for P, proper whole food nutrition. U is understanding supplements. Z is zapping stress. Z or Z's sleep. L is love and encouragement for yourself and with the people that are in your environment. And E is exercise and environment. So those are the foundational pieces that you should really focus on every day to have optimal health, optimal fertility, balanced hormones, and just feel amazing and have longevity for life. So that's the second piece. And the third piece is one I want to dive into a little bit deeper, and one we also talked about earlier, and that's really non-toxing your life. Cleaning up your environment. We have so many toxins around us, and I feel this is one of the main reasons why we have so much infertility. There's just toxins everywhere. It's in our air, in our water, in our food, in our products. They're everywhere. And so really focusing on non-toxing your life and removing the things that are causing, the things that you can, obviously, getting clean products, switching out your beauty products and your cleaning products, cleaning up your water, getting filtered water within your house in drinking and in shower water, cleaning up your air, getting an air filter in your house, making sure that you're changing those filters regularly, doing as much as you can to avoid these toxins because they're everywhere and they're going to wreck our hormones, our fertility, and our health. The fourth thing I would say is functional labs. Once you've laid the foundation, really look deeper and look at doing some of these labs that we talked about earlier, because there is a root cause. If you're having symptoms of hormone imbalance, there's a reason for that. And if you've done blood work, especially, and it says everything's normal, you need to keep looking deeper. It's not just because, as women, we're taught, A cycle should be painful. We should have trouble getting pregnant. We should struggle in menopause. None of that is true. These are symptoms, and your body's telling you something is wrong. It's an alarm. So look deeper, look at some functional labs, spend the money, figure out why, and work from there. And then the fifth thing is find somebody to work with. Find a practitioner like Lauren or myself. You can't DIY your health. And as much as I would like to say you can, if your car breaks down, you're going to take it to the shop and have a professional fix it. If your house is messing up, you're going to call a professional to fix things. Don't DIY your health. Get a professional to help you with this. Somebody to hold your hand, somebody who's an expert who can help you with these tests, help you with the foundational pieces, and really walk with you through this as you heal. So those are my 5 hacks to balance hormones fast.
Those are great. All right. I'm going to unpack them and repeat them. We're going to go
Yes.
backwards. So you can't DIY, do it yourself health. However, it's you that's responsible for it. So you're saying find a guide, have somebody help facilitate. And that's, I know for you and for me, when they come in and they've seen multiple people, they just say, I want you to be my advocate, help me. Right. And so they want direction, right. And tell them what they could be doing differently to optimize their health and fertility. So get a guide. You can't do it all on your own. All of us get consultants. We get lawyers, we get accountants, we take somebody to see our car. The lab test we talked about, I call that the fertility audit or the health audit. Let's just do a little extra digging besides the conventional testing. Toxins, we have a whole podcast by Jacqueline Downs on our site on talks a little bit about that. And you have tons of stuff on your website about that as well. So that makes sense, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Like we got to think of your garden, right? If you had rocks and contaminated soil and weeds, you would pull out the weeds, you would remove some of that soil, put in better soil, remove some of those rocks in your garden so it can flourish, right? So same thing with our body. And then we got your puzzle acronym here. Okay. What did the P stand for? That's the only one I missed, I think.
Yeah. Proper whole food nutrition.
Okay, so there's your diet. So P is for nutrition. U is you're using supplements. Then one of the Z was to work with stress. So get out of that sympathetic alarm into that parasympathetic, which is also known as not only the rest and digest. I also heard it called the breed and feed nervous system. Emphasis on breed, right?
I love it.
Sleep. We heal when we sleep. That's the other Z. L was love.
Love and encouragement for yourself and from the people around you.
And then E, exercise, movement. Awesome. Love the puzzle acronym. And then foundation of health. What does that entail when you say foundation of health? Number 2 was foundation of health.
Yeah, so that's all of those pieces are going to create the foundations that you need for optimal health. So we need them all. Yeah.
Okay. So under foundation of health is the puzzle.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. And then what I love, you said number 1, belief and trust, belief in yourself, trust, because the Conscious Fertility Podcast is all about your relationship with self and those negative thoughts and that subconscious programming. You know, when I do my conscious work with the women I see, so many of them say, I knew since I was young that I'd have trouble getting pregnant. And they will talk about an incident or happen, or they always had this fear, or they, after going through multiple unsuccessful ART cycles, they don't believe in themselves and they feel that their bodies betrayed them. So can you go a little bit more on that? Is it just that you got to learn to believe and trust, or do you have things that you support people to change subconscious programming? Because I'm not sure.
Sure. So I'm a trained hypnotherapist. So I work.
Okay.
Yeah.
We share that. Okay. I did not know that. I see. There we go. Okay.
There we
All right.
go.
So you're a
Yes.
trained hypnotherapist. Excellent.
So-
That now
Yep.
I understand now, but go ahead, because now I want the audience to understand.
Sure. So I work on releasing those limiting beliefs, and I am also trained in quantum physics, and quantum medicine believes that it starts at the top and goes down. So it really starts with that supramental intuition and then goes into the belief system. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions are going to create what's happening in the energetic body and then in the physical body. So whenever somebody comes in, and it's like I said earlier, we have a lot of people with these stories, and sometimes they start in childhood and they believe that their body's broken, and they've told themselves, I am this diagnosis. Oh, I have PCOS, so I'm going to struggle with fertility. Or I'm over 35 and I'm advanced maternal age, so I'm not not going to be able to get pregnant. All these stories that we create, and then that creates our reality, and then our physical body follows suit with what our stories tell us. So it's releasing through the hypnotherapy that I do, but also releasing. I like to do a lot with visualization and mantras, reprogramming the brain and telling yourself, yes, my body is powerful. I can get pregnant. I will get pregnant. And really believing that into your core. And the more you tell yourself that and you say this out loud and you do these mantras, I also want you to visualize that. Visualize yourself pregnant as a mom. How is that going to feel? How is that, really think about it. What is your life going to be like? What is your world going to be like? Visualizing, telling yourself the mantras and reprogramming the brain, then eventually you're going to start to become, I'm this person who can get pregnant. And then we see the physical body follow suit as you do that work. So it's a really beautiful practice. It goes hand in hand with the foundational pieces with the physical, and then the mental and emotional with the belief work.
Hey, and I'm with you at top down. I find that is, it's bi-directional, right? The mental emotional affects the physical affects the mental emotional. However, I think the most important aspect is that mental emotional work in those programs, because your behaviors become congruent with your beliefs and your programs. So change those beliefs and programs, you start to have these behaviors that lead to health. I'm scheduled to be interviewed on your podcast soon. And now that I didn't know you were trained as a clinical hypnotherapist, we're going to have fun. I'm so excited. I hope this is what you want to talk about, because this is my passion. You talked about quantum physics. I'd like to give a shout out. We had Amit Goswami on our podcast. He's episode 62, Quantum Integrative Healing. He's written quite a few books on this. He's a quantum physicist for those that are interested more in this topic.
Yeah, and he actually was one of my professors at the school that I went to, Quantum University, for my PhD. So I know it very well, and he's amazing. I love his work. So
he was
yeah.
great. I had him and Valentina on together. So this has been excellent. I kind of got a little bit more. Do you have a little more time? I can ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
So in general, kind of what is your approach then when somebody comes to see you? Kind of like if I think you've talked about it, but if we can kind of wrap it up, organize it.
Sure. So the first thing that I like to do is called a deep dive call. And so I'll have a couple come into me and they submit their full health history, which is a 57-page document that I worked a lot of time and effort on putting this together. So I get every piece of their puzzle so I can really work as a detective, like you said. So I'll look at that full health history. I'll have them submit any labs that they've done previously to me. And I look at all of that like this big puzzle that we need to solve. And so then when the couple comes on the call with me, we really talk through that. What have you done? What does your past look like? What does your present look like? And then I'll take all of that information and I'll make recommendations accordingly. Do we need to do some one-on-one support? Do we need lab testing? Do we need both? And then based on that conversation, I'll decide, okay, well, what does this couple need? I feel most people do need the one-on-one support because, like I said earlier, it's so hard to do this on your own. We really need to get in there, get some lab tests done, but also you need somebody to walk with you through this protocol because sometimes it can be a little bit much, especially if we're doing something like a detox protocol or something where we're really trying to heal the hormones or heal the gut. And so that's where we start. And then as the couple comes in, we run the lab testing. And then I look at the labs and I put together a protocol based on the labs. And this will entail targeted nutrition based around fertility and based around deficiencies or toxicities, whatever we're trying to work on with nutrition. Then we'll also put the lifestyle pieces into that. If they're struggling with stress management or they're not sleeping, wherever they need support, we'll work through that. And each week of my program is a different piece of the hormone puzzle. So we're laying the foundations, but we're also putting the lab testing results and protocol into that. Sometimes people come in and they're already doing all the foundations. So we really just work on optimizing and up leveling where we think we need to up level. Some people come to me and they haven't done any of this. They're still kind of not really eating that great, not really sleeping that great. Maybe they're like me, they're working out too hard, eating too little. So we really meet the couple where they're at and work on those foundations as well as laying, kind of putting the protocol for the lab tests into that. And so we work together for 12 weeks and most of my people, they end up getting pregnant within that 12 weeks. If they don't, then we will, sometimes we'll need to do another 12 weeks. It just really depends on how much we're working on and how much healing needs to happen. But I get great results and I've helped a lot of people get pregnant. So that's kind of the steps they would take if they were to work with me.
Excellent. And how do they find you? And you said you wanted to give something away as well. So
Yeah,
what's the best way to find you? So let us know. We'll put the links in the show notes. And then also,
sure.
what are you offering and how do they claim it?
So it's our Optimizing Egg Health and AMH Guide. It's a guidebook that talks about how to really identify if you have issues with egg health and AMH, what tests to do, what to look for, and then how to optimize those numbers and improve them through diet and lifestyle. There's some really fun recipes in there, some lifestyle hacks. And so that guidebook, where you can find me is on my website. That's the best place. That is at hormonepuzzlesociety.com. And there you will find some free cookbooks, a bunch of blogs. You'll find my podcast, a lot of information to help you through your journey, no matter where you're at in that process. And then I'm also on social media. I love to hang out on Instagram, and I'm at Kela, Kela _ health coach, as well as Hormone Puzzle Method. And then we didn't even talk about this, but I do have a program if anybody is looking to become a fertility coach. I have a certified fertility coach certification program, and I talk a lot about that on TikTok, where I'm at Dr. Kela Smith. And
Excellent. So
yeah, one other thing too,
yeah.
podcast, Hormone Puzzle Podcast.
And a lot of that stuff they can find from your website, right? The hormonepuzzlesociety.com. There's links to all these things as well.
Yes.
Perfect.
Great. And then I have the link for the egg health guide. It is hormonepuzzlesociety.com/egg-health-guide.
Perfect. I'm so happy that you, Dr. Kela Smith, joined me today on the Conscious Fertility Podcast. Feel like I've made another friend connection here. I did not know about your background in hypnosis, but it makes sense now with all the things you're doing that you do. And that was so cool that you studied with Amit as well, Goswami. That's really interesting. So I'm looking forward to our geek out on your podcast coming soon. And again, thank you very much. Check out the show notes. And if you missed where to find that free ebook on boosting your egg health, hit rewind a couple 15, 20 seconds and you'll hear it again. And we'll put it in the show notes too. Thank you, Kela.
Thank you.